in England and all that palaver. And then when I was 18, they bombed me. They kicked me out in the middle of my A-levels, which was a bit of a shock. But the fact I could only run 100 metres in about 45 seconds put me at some disadvantage with the fast lads.
And you're vertically challenged as well, of course.
Well, some would say that. So it ended up, my dad was a miner. He didn't really want me to go down the pits. Lots of jobs in the shipyards at that time. Really didn't want me to do that. So they sent me off for an interview with South Tyneside Borough Council as a housing trainee. And I walked into the interview at 9 o'clock one morning. There was a lot of people for the jobs. And the two guys who were interviewing me were Sunderland supporters.
Right, that was fortuitous.
It was certainly fortuitous, because for the next half an hour, 40 minutes, they were asking me about football, and one of the guys said, by the way, there's an interdepartmental football league within the council, so housing, place, social services and education. If you got the job, would you play football for us? And I said, yeah, of course I would. So we talked about Sunderland and the FA Cup win and all of that stuff. And then after about 40 minutes, one of the guys said, I'm really sorry, we've gone over 10 minutes and you're the first one we've got today. Going to have to pull this to an end, but I've got to ask you a question about housing. And I thought, this is it, they're going to find me out here. And he said, here's the question, are you interested in housing? I said, yes. And he said, that's good enough for me. And so that's how I got into local government. Actually really enjoyed working in housing. Was at South Tyneside for 5 years, then moved to Blythe Valley Borough Council in the early 80s as a housing manager, and worked my way up there, so that 1998 I was lucky enough to become chief executive of the council, and was chief exec until local government reorganisation came in 2009 with a unitary county council in Northumberland. So my council was abolished. Spent 5 years working for myself, my own company, and then 2 years ago had the opportunity, applied for the Director of Planning and Economy job at Northumberland, and as they say, the rest is history. So I'm back in local government now. So there's a very quick potted history of myself. All
right, okay. Director of Economy and Planning. So what areas are your responsibility then? What areas do you cover?
Well, let's take planning first. There's two sides of planning. One is the whole strategic infrastructure for planning, so developing the local plan, the core strategy for the council. That's taken a number of years. There's a massive amount of information, research, consultation to go through. But we will be submitting our local plan to government in December this year, and hopefully that will go through examination next year and will be signed off probably about the summer next year. So that's a huge amount of work which is involving consultation in all communities across Northumberland. The other side of planning is actually dealing with planning applications. So it's development management. And what we've done over the last 2 years, we weren't performing very well in terms of how quickly we turned applications round. In the last 18 months, we've put a number of very significant changes into the system, and we've completely changed it around. So planning services in terms of dealing with applications is going really well. We're getting applications turned around really quickly. So that's the planning side. On the economy side, it's my role to effectively make sure that there is a strong strategy for economic growth in Northumberland, and make sure that there's a delivery plan with interventions across the whole of Northumberland. So that's basically what I do.
Okay, so on the economy side, one of the things that you're here to talk about, the main thing you're here to talk about this morning is the reintroduction of a passenger and freight service on the Blythe Tyne Ashington line. Can you just tell us a little bit about the background to that and what the history to it is?
Yeah, actually the project is about reintroducing passenger services because there's already freight services on the line.
Right.
This is something which was quite new to me a couple of years ago. Apart from playing with Hornby railway set, I've really not been that involved in railways. But one of my responsibilities was looking at this project and seeing if we could reintroduce passenger services to this line. It's got quite an interesting history, because the line itself was actually opened in June 1840, and the purpose of it was to link it was an economic purpose, and it was to link the collieries in southeast Northumberland to the River Tyne, and there was a whole network of railway lines that did that. So that was opened in 1840, and within just a year, obviously the opportunity to put passengers on the line was exploited. So from 1841 right through to 1964, the line was used for passenger services to move people around southeast Northumberland. Various ownerships since it was opened for passengers in 1841. It was nationalised in 1948, British Railways, but then in 1964 the line was closed for passengers with the Beeching Review. I think what's happened since 1964 is interesting. The line, there's two parts of the line. One was a loop which went round North Tyneside, so Monk Seaton, Whitley Bay, Cullercoats, Tynemouth, and in 1977 that part of the line was a loop within the metro system, so it became used as the metro line.
Yeah.
So part of the old infrastructure is on the metro network today.
Right.
The other part of the line, which ran from Newbiggin, as it was right through to Newcastle Central Station, that was continued to be used for freight. So today, anybody who knows the line will see occasionally one or two freight trains a day using the line. So our ambition is to put a passenger service back onto that line.
Yeah. So the passenger service that stopped. When did that stop?
That stopped in 1964. So it's
Right.
what's that? 52 years ago.
So it's a long, long time since we had any kind of passengers up and down that line. So what's Northumberland County Council trying to achieve with the reintroduction of a passenger service then?
I think the very fact that there are at least 150,000 people live in southeast Northumberland without a railway line taking them into the centre of the northeast into Newcastle. I think that's a big miss in terms of the area. So there's a number of things we're trying to achieve. One is to improve the transport infrastructure to allow people to get into Newcastle and other places much easier. If I was jumping on in my car from Ashington at peak period going into Newcastle, that would probably be an hour, if not longer. Our ambition is to probably halve that journey time. So improving journey times around the region. Obviously, if we took people off the roads in their cars, there's got environmental benefits there. But there's a huge economic benefit as well, because what it does is it allows people in southeast Northumberland to have much easier access to job opportunities in Gateshead and Newcastle in the centre of the region. So I think the other thing is, as we develop southeast Northumberland, so Blythe Enterprise Zones, Ashington Town Centre, is an opportunity as well as the economy grows in southeast Northumberland to allow people to move the other way into jobs as well.
Right, because I was quite interested in that. I was trying to kind of, from my perspective, living in southeast Northumberland, I was trying to work out whether or not it would be kind of beneficial in terms of inward investment into southeast Northumberland, or whether it would just kind of result in a further drain of people from southeast Northumberland towards the Newcastle City area.
I think it's both ways, Ian.
Yeah.
I think the latter there, in terms of getting people into jobs in North Tyneside and Newcastle, is probably the first thing, but in the medium to longer term, certainly the ambition is to see people moving the other way as well. I think we've got to be quite pragmatic in Northumberland. If you look at the economy in Northumberland, we have got a massive number of people who travel from all parts of Northumberland, not just southeast Northumberland, into the Newcastle area for jobs. And we're never going to book that trend, because the Newcastle area is the centre of the economy. But as the infrastructure for communication, certainly digital, improves as we invest more money in economic infrastructure in southeast Northumberland, certainly the plan is to get people to moving into southeast Northumberland as well.
Okay, I mean, there's been quite a bit of publicity about the progress that's currently being made. What's the current position, and what's currently happening with the reintroduction of the passenger service on the line?
The thing that the council has got to go through is, I'm not going to go into the detail of this, but it's called a GRIP process. Any work that you need to do on network rail infrastructure requires quite a formal process to look at projects, and there are 8 stages to that process. We're currently at stage 2, and it's a really important stage. Now, stage 1 actually looked at the economic case for opening the line to passenger services, and it concluded that that was actually a good economic infrastructure project to drive in the northeast. And we're now in something called GRIP 2. Now, GRIP 2 is something which the county council is funding. It's quite an expensive process. Excuse me. And we're working with Network Rail at the moment to look at a specification that we drew up after Grip 1 was completed, so we know what we want on the line. We've got an optimum service that we want to see. And they're testing that specification out against the line, its infrastructure, the signalling, and a range of other things that need to be overcome. That should be completed within the next couple of months. So by May time, we should know if we've got a real project on our hands here.
Okay, excellent. We'll take a little bit of a break now. I'll ask you to pick some songs and ask you to kind of have a bit of a think about the first record you ever bought. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about that.
The first record I ever bought was second hand. And whilst all my mates were going to the City Hall and seeing all these new bands like Queen and Free and all of that, I was playing football all the time. So I didn't buy lots of records, but the first record I bought was a David Bowie LP called Hunky Dory, and I just thought it was absolutely wonderful. So first few records after that, albums after that, I was really into Bowie, but then sort of lost a bit of interest as he sort of changed the sort of his style. So the song that I really like off that is "Oh You Pretty Things."
Okay, let's go with that now.
Wake up your sleepy head, put on some clothes, shake up your bed, put another log on the fire for me. I made some breakfast and coffee. Look out my window, what do I see? A crack in the sky and a hand reaching down to me. All the nightmares came today, and it looks as though they're here to stay. What are we coming to? No room for me, no fun for you. I think about a world to come, where the books were found by the golden ones, written in pain, written in all by a puzzled man who questioned what we were here for. All the strangers came today, and it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your drivers insane? Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your drivers insane? Let me make it plain, gotta make way for the whole superior. Look out at your children, see their faces in golden rays. Don't kid yourself, they belong to you. They're the start of the coming race. The author's a bitch, we finished our news. Homo sapiens have outgrown their use. All the strangers came today, and it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your drivers insane? Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your drivers insane? Let me make it plain, gotta make way for the Homo superior.
That's David Bowie there, and that's the choice, the first single he ever bought, from Geoff Paul, who's the Director of Economy and Planning at Northumberland County Council. This is Mind Your Own Business on Koast Radio 106.6 FM and around the world via the internet. We're talking to Geoff about the reintroduction of passenger services on the Tyne Blythe Ashington line, and you were talking just before we brought the song in, Geoff, about the optimum service that you want to see. What is that?
Okay, the work we did in the Grip 1 study came up with a specification, an optimum specification that ideally we would like to see when the line is reopened to passengers. So, in simple terms, it's a line which we're hoping to start at Woodhorn Colliery and take it right through into Newcastle Central Station. There is a line still there from Ashington through to Woodhorn. We'd have to build a new station at Woodhorn, but it would be a fantastic access into Woodhorn Colliery as well. So the line we would hope would run weekdays to Saturday. At this point in time, we're not suggesting Sunday, but that's something I think we'll be talking to Network Rail about. And it'll run from 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. In peak times, so early in the morning and around tea time, we're looking at a 30-minute service, and off-peak it'll be an hour service. So if you're getting on the train at Ashington, for example, and want to get through into Newcastle, we estimate it's just going to take over 30 minutes. We're looking at stations at Woodhorn, at Ashington, Bedlington, Blythe. There's possibly 2 stations at Blythe, Seaton Delaval, Seg Hill, then moving into out of Northumberland into North Tyneside into Northumberland Park, and then going into Newcastle to Manners and Central. So I think the thing about Northumberland Park as well is a really important issue, because that would be a new metro interchange, so people will be able to get off at Northumberland Park and jump on the metro. So all of those people from South East Northumberland who are using the line can get off at Northumberland Park, jump on the metro and get to their favourite football team at the Stadium of Light.
Or St James's Park, as the case may be.
Oh, of course, St James's Park. So I think it's important that metro interchange is really important. We'll also be looking to share technology with the metro, similar sort of technology, CCTV systems, information systems, and hopefully joint ticketing arrangements as well. So what that specification gives is the requirement for a number of new stations that would be built, a couple of refurbished stations, safe and secure, with high quality passenger facilities. So that's in a nutshell the specification that we are currently looking at, and we're testing the current line to see if it's capable of delivering that service.
All right, quite interested in this, because I'm assuming that at some point a train service provider, a rail service provider, will have to kind of take a commercial decision as to whether or not that will be profitable for them. Is that something that could be a potential risk in terms of the project, or is it something where somebody would come in and subsidise the line if it was going to be more expensive than the money made on it?
No, Ian, you're raising a really important point here. I don't think we can run on the basis of build it and they will come. I think we need a lot of certainty in terms of the franchisee. So what we've been doing over the last 18 months is working very, very well with Department for Transport and Rail North, because last year the Northern franchise was up for grabs as well, and we were successful in making sure that incorporated the requirement for the successful organisation to cooperate and work on the reopening of the Ashington, Blythe and Tyne line. So that was announced in December. Arriva were the successful company. That starts on the 1st of April. So we haven't talked to Arriva yet, because they're working very hard on the transition. But we've written to Arriva, and we hope to have early discussions probably in May or June about the role they'll play in opening up the line. So really important point, but it's already on the table that the line will have a commercial element through Arriva.
All right, okay, that's obviously one challenge, but presumably there's going to be an awful lot of other challenges that's involved in delivering a project of this scale and magnitude.
Well, yeah, if you just go to the work we're doing now, and in terms of it's a feasibility study with Network Rail. There's quite a lot of work being done to date. We should be finished, as I say, in a month, 2 months' time. That raises a number of challenges, just practical, technical challenges. So let's first of all take the one about getting access to the main Koast East line. At the south of the line, this requires the trains for a number of miles to go on to the East Coast main line and go into Newcastle Central Station. So obviously what's happening on the East Coast main line, there's some very fast trains going up and down there.
Absolutely, and you're going to bring a chugger into the mix.
Well, I hope it's not a chugger. But yeah, it's a logistics issue, and we've got to find a way to fit into the timetable against that specification I mentioned earlier in terms of half hour in peak time and an hour's turnaround on other times. So that's an issue. Access to platforms at Newcastle stations, another issue. So currently working on that and seeing if we can get the logistics sorted. One other big issue that is a challenge to us is there are 26 crossings on the line currently from Woodhorn through to Newcastle Central Station. Now those crossings could be a road crossing, there could be a farmer's crossing, there could be pedestrian crossings. But at this point in time, you've got one train a day, 2 trains per day doing 10 mile an hour.
Yeah.
In a few years' time, we're going to have quite a number of trains doing 50, 60, 70 mile an hour on that line. So there's a whole issue of health and safety. So
it's quite complex in terms of the planning arrangements there, because obviously we're talking about speeding up the journey time into kind of Newcastle. But I guess if there's more trains going across level crossings, that if you're a road user, that it could make some of the congestion worse at the busiest times.
And there's one or two key places that we're doing studies at the moment to see what the impact of that would be. But the whole issue of level crossings is a big one. That undoubtedly will come in with a significant cost of changing the crossings to make them safer. But again, we're working on that now. In a couple of months' time, we should know the outcome of that. The other thing which quite surprised me is the need to make sure, obviously, the signalling system is fit for purpose. And what I was absolutely astounded to find was that the current signal on the freight line is done by real operatives in those little wooden huts pulling levers.
Right.
And I just thought everything would be digitised by now, but it isn't. So that's another issue that would have to be looked at.
Wow.
And the final thing, probably, well, apart from the finance, of course, the final thing is that there's part of the line south of Blythe, significant part of the line, which is just single track. And so I think we appreciate that if we are going to get the timetable as we want it, there probably needs to be some new track built as well on the line.
So this is obviously a project which isn't just being delivered by Network Rail and Northumberland County Council. There's some wider partners involved. You've mentioned Arriva.
Yeah. I think I've got to give credit to Northumberland County Council because a couple of years ago they really, they said we want to do everything we can to get this line reopened to passengers. It's a high priority. There had been previous attempts in the past, and for all sorts of various reasons, they've never really sort of produced anything. But the County Council they've made it a priority. They've put significant resources into this. So at this point in time, a lot of the work has been carried out by the County Council. But as we've progressed over the last year or so, it's obviously a major regional infrastructure project, and we've made sure that the North East Combined Authority is fully aware of this, and the Combined Authority now sees this as a priority. It's been built into the proposed devolution deal. It's the only project in the whole of the North East that's mentioned in the deal. So we're beginning to get a lot of momentum here on this project. So certainly the Combined Authority is really important to delivering this. We are talking to Network Rail, to Transport for the North, etc. as well.
Okay, and I know there's been a South East Northumberland rail user group as well, Senrug, that's been campaigning for the reintroduction of this service as well.
Yes, Senrug have been around for a number of years and have promoted this the reopening of this line for a number of years. So it's great to be able to say to Senrug, it looks as though we're moving on this, and subject to the current studies that are ongoing, there's a fair possibility that we're going to make this happen.
All right, sounds good. Okay, let's go on with your next song choice, one that kind of picks you up when you're feeling a little bit down. Can you remember what you chose?
Oh, it was a Bob Dylan thing.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, it wasn't it?
No, it was a Ronan Keating thing.
With Bob Dylan. Or Cat Stevens.
Yes, that's it.
Sorry. It's father and son, isn't it?
That's absolutely right. Let's go with that.
It's not time to make a change. Just relax, take it easy. You're still young, that's your fault. There's so much you have to know. Find a girl, settle down. If you want, you can marry. Look at me, I am old, but I'm happy. I was once like you are now, and I know that it's not easy to be calm when you found something going on. Take your time, think a lot, think of everything you've got. For you will still be here tomorrow, but your dreams may not. How can I try to explain when I do, it turns away again? It's always been the same old story. From the moment I could talk, I was ordered to listen. Now there's a way, and I know that I have to go away. I know I have to go.
Was once like you are now, and I know that it's not easy to be calm when you found something going on. But take your time, think a lot, or think of everything you've got. For you will still be here tomorrow, but your dreams may not.
And all the times that I've cried, given all the things I knew inside, it's hard, but it's harder to ignore it.
You go and make this
If they
decision.
were right, I'd agree, but it's them they know, not me. Now there's a way, and I know that I have to go away. I know I have to go.
Yes, father and son there from Ronan Keating and Cat Stevens, or he had another name, Yusuf, I can't remember his second name. In the studio this morning, I've got Geoff Paul, who's the Director of Economy and Planning at Northumberland County Council, and we're having a very interesting conversation on the progress of reintroducing the passenger transport links on the rail line from the Tyne through Blythe into Ashington. And I'm just wondering, Geoff, how this fits into a kind of a wider strategic context within Northumberland and within the wider region.
Yeah, I think it's important to put it in the context of what we're trying to achieve, both in Northumberland and also in the northeast. The northeast, you know, people, your listeners will be aware. If there's a recession, the northeast is usually the first to suffer the effects, and when we come out of recession, the northeast is the last to benefit from it. So, in the northeast, the Local Enterprise Partnership and the Northeast Combined Authority have recently put together a major economic strategy called the Strategic Economic Plan. The bottom line on that is we're trying across the whole of the northeast to create 100,000 new jobs by 2025. So it's really important that in Northumberland we sit back and reflect and say, well, what is Northumberland's contribution to those 100,000? Now, we think over the next 10 years to 2025, our contribution will be around about 6,000 new jobs, and by 2031, which is the end of our economic strategy, 10,000 jobs. So it's important that what we do with the Blythe and Tyne, the Ashington, Blythe and Tyne line, has got an opportunity to support that. So if you look at South East Northumberland, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, there's a massive amount of infrastructure and capital investment. So, we've got about £160 million worth of major housing proposals in Morpeth. We've got the potential for dualling the A1. We've got £80 million town centre investment in Ashington. The new Axo Nobel factory is a £120 million investment, and so on. So there's a whole range of infrastructure things happening in terms of the economy, not least also the enterprise zones around Blythe. So by having that railway line, a good transport infrastructure actually supports economic growth in itself. So that's where it fits in terms of the region and Northumberland.
Yeah, this is going to be an expensive project, isn't it? It's going to cost multi-million pounds to deliver this project. So where's the money coming from?
Well, there's a lot of money at the moment being spent on the feasibility study and the work we need to find out if this is actually feasible. Right. So that money at this moment in time is coming from Northumberland County Council, who are investing quite heavily in it. So we've paid for the Grip 1 and Grip 2 studies. We've got some allocation for Grip 3. We are talking to the North East Local Enterprise Partnership, and we'll be talking to the Combined Authority about seeing if we can get some money from the Local Growth Fund for the remaining money on Grip 3. So the County Council's got a significant amount of money which it's earmarked for this proposal. But obviously if it's then given the green light and we make it happen, then we will be doing lots of work on level crossings. We'll be building new stations. We'll be putting new track in. We'll be building car parks and park and ride and so on. So there's a huge capital infrastructure here that's got to be put in.
Right.
I don't know the exact amount that it's going to cost, but it's going to be tens of millions. It could be 80, 100 million pounds to make this happen. So the council is willing to put some money aside,
right,
but certainly it cannot fund it all. So we'll be looking to regional partners, so for example the North East Combined Authority, to see what we can do to support the project. We'll be talking to national bodies, and we'll also be trying to secure some European funding as well. So there's going to be a cocktail of funding, hopefully, that makes this happen.
Yeah, so I suppose the initial investment from Northumberland County is trying to prove the case that this is a viable project and a worthwhile project to do. Is that basically?
Absolutely, because in the past, I mentioned before, there's been, my own organisation, Blythe Valley, looked at this 10 years ago, and if I'm honest, we didn't put the same level of commitment into the process as Northumberland County Council's doing today.
Okay, so in terms of the next steps, where do we take it from here, and when are we likely to see anything happen?
Well, next steps are to complete the Grip 2 process, which is going to be May or June, and at the end of that process we'll know if we've got technically a feasible scheme here, and we'll also have a fairly clear view of the estimate of cost. And if we get over that point and we've got a scheme that we can run with, then we need to go through further Grip studies, looking at designing it and looking at the construction, looking at procurement and getting the work done. There'll be a lot of consultation in South East Northumberland in terms of the project. So if everything goes to plan, we get the funding in, we get a technically feasible scheme, we get the Combined Authority to support this, and it's been very supportive up until now. We would like to see somebody cutting a ribbon in December 2020.
Okay, so who's got the final say on this then? So you've done all of the work, you've established it's a feasible project, you've got potentially the money in place. Who actually says yea or nay? Is this a Network Rail? Is it a government?
Yeah, the government will be involved, Network Rail will be involved, Northumberland County Council will be involved, and the North East Combined Authority. So I don't think any one of those bodies will just say, yes, this is going to happen. This is very much a partnership approach, and thinks it needs a lot of commitment and will from those bodies to make it happen.
Okay, thank you very much, Geoff Paul, Director of Economy and Planning for Northumberland County Council. And just before you go, Geoff, I asked you to pick a song which you felt best represented Northumberland as an organisation.
Well, when you asked me to do this, I did Google songs with Northumberland in. I came up with one which is from Mark Knopfler, and it's called Fare Thee Well Northumberland. And when I listened to it, it seems to be about somebody who, for whatever reason, is leaving the northeast, leaving Northumberland, is going to Newcastle Central Station, and is leaving the area. And I suppose one of the challenges for myself and people that work with me and the northeast in general is how do we retain the talent that obviously exists within our communities. We need to create opportunities. We need to provide people with the skills to access those opportunities. And with a bit of luck, not too many people will jump on the train in Newcastle and go down to London.
Okay, Geoff Paul, thank you very much for coming in this morning. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me in.
Okay.
Come drive me down to the central station. I hate to leave my river time for some damn town that's God-forsaken. Fare thee well, Northumberland. Although I'll go where Lady takes me, she'll never tell what's in her hand. I do not know what fate awaits me. Fare thee well, Northumberland. My heart beats for my streets and alleys, longs to dwell in the borderland, the northeast shore and the river valleys. Fare thee well, Northumberland. I may not stay, I'm bound for leaving, bound to ramble and a roam. I only say my heart is grieving, I would not gamble on my coming home. Roll on, jolly boy, roll. Drive me down to the central station. I hate to leave my river time for some damn town that's God-forsaken. Goodbye, old friend of mine. Although I'll go where the lady takes me, she'll never tell what's in her hand. I do not know what fate awaits me. Fare thee well, Northumberland. So roll on, jolly boy, roll. Roll on, jolly boy, roll.
If you like this,
It's like the boys like him. He's savage like an animal.
or this,
But you keep me coming around, boy, and play me. Now hush, don't make a sound.
or this,
Say hello, just like a radio. Say hello, just like a radio.
Tune in every Thursday night from 8 till 10 for the very best of unsigned music. Get yourself heard. Email your MP3 tracks, your band biographies and gig dates to nuttyunleashed@hotmail.com. The Nutty Professor Unleashed. Only on Coast Radio 106.6 FM and worldwide on the wobbly web.
Coast Radio, bringing the community together in southeast Northumberland.
every time that you get undressed, I hear symphonies in my head. I wrote this song just looking at you. Oh, oh. Yeah, the drums they swing low, and the trumpets they go. And the trumpets they go. Yeah, the trumpets they go. They go. Is it weird that I hear violins whenever you're gone? Whenever you're gone. Is it weird that your ass remind me of a Kanye West song? Kanye West song. Is it weird that I hear trumpets when you're turning me on? Turning me on. Is it weird that your bra remind me of a Katy Perry song? Every time that you get undressed, I hear symphonies in my head. I wrote this song just looking at you. Oh, oh. Yeah, the drums they swing low, and the trumpets they go. And they play it for you, girl. And the trumpets they go. Yeah. Yeah, the trumpets they go. Yeah, the trumpets they go. Go, 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 go. They go. Damn, is it weird that I hear angels every time that you moan? Oh yeah, is it weird that your eyes remind me of a Coldplay song? Coldplay song. Is it weird that I hear trumpets when you're turning me on? Is it weird that your bra remind me of a Katy Perry song? Every time that you get undressed, I hear symphonies in my head. I wrote this song looking at you. Oh, yeah. Every time you get undressed, every time that you get undressed, symphonies in my head, symphonies in my head. I wrote this song, looking at you. Yeah, the drums they swing low, and the trumpets they go.
Yeah, Jason Derulo there, and trumpets.
They go.
This is Mind Your Own Business on Coast Radio. Coming up around about 11 o'clock, we've got Allan Hepple, who's the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth from Northumberland County Council, and he'll be talking about housing. Rolling Stones. This is Angie.
Angie, when will those clouds all disappear? Andy, goodbye. Angie, I still love you. Remember all those nights we cried. All the dreams we held so close seem to all go up in smoke. Let me whisper in your ear, Angie, Angie, where will it lead us from here? Oh, Angie, don't you weep. All your kisses still taste sweet. I hate that sadness in your eyes, but Angie, ain't it time we said goodbye? With no loving in our households and no money in our coats, you can't say we're satisfied. But Angie, I still love you, baby. Everywhere I look, I see your eyes. There ain't a woman that comes close to you. Come on, baby, dry your eyes. Angie, ain't it good to be alive? Angie, you can't say we never tried.
Like us on Facebook to keep up to date with what's new on Coast Radio. Get in touch. www.coastradio.co.uk.
Coast Radio, online and 106.6 FM.
Coast Radio, your station, your music, your choice. Coast Radio.
It doesn't have to be this way. Just counting the hours. 'Cause when your bed is made, then baby it's too late. Yeah. There's no hope for a hungry child whose joker is wild. They take all hope away by the end of the day. Well, I just about had enough of the sunshine. Hey, what did I hear you say? You know it doesn't have to be that way. When you walk out the door, you gotta ask for more. You gotta ask for more. It doesn't have to hurt that way. Just counting the pain. You've only got yourselves to blame for playing the game. and they take all hope away, and I just can't see the sense of my mind's ahead. Ooh, and I just about had enough with this sunshine. Hey, what did I hear you say? You know it doesn't have to be that way. When you walk out the door, baby, you gotta ask for more from society. Take a tip from me now, yeah. For the sunshine, hey, what did I hear you say? Oh, you know it doesn't have to be that way. When you walk out the door, ooh, you better ask for more, baby, baby, baby. Hey, what did I hear you say? You know it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've heard that one. That's the Blow Monkeys there, and it doesn't have to be that way. This is Mind Your Own Business. And around about 11 o'clock, we've got Allan Hepple, the Cabinet Member from Economic Growth from Northumberland County Council, coming into the studio to talk about housing in Northumberland. So stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, I've had Elisa on the phone. And she's put a request in for a little bit of Bob Marley and Three Little Birds, so why not?
Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. Singing, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. Rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. Three little birds, it's by my doorstep, singing sweet songs of melodies pure and true, saying, this is my message to you. Singing, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Saying, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. Rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. Three little birds, it's by my doorstep, singing sweet songs of melodies pure and true, saying, this is my message to you. Really don't worry about a thing. Worry about a thing, oh, every little thing gonna be alright. Don't worry, singing, don't worry about a thing. I won't worry, 'cause every little thing
Like us on Facebook to keep up to date with what's new on Koast Radio. Koast Radio, playing the music you love to hear.
Are you looking for fantastic furniture deals and catalogue returns at unbelievable prices? Well, visit me and my team at Utter Clutter. Come and see what we have for you. Here's somebody posh to tell you the important bits.
Thanks, Dan. You'll find us at Unit 5 Waterside Court in Ashington. Give us a call on 01670 457 877 or check out our stock on Facebook at Utter-Clutter. We can even deliver and assemble your furniture for you.
Just ask for Dan. I love furniture.
Contact Koast Radio now. Call the studio live on 01670 432 107 and get involved.
I was there to witness Candice's in her business. She wants the boys to notice her rainbows and her bonus. She was educated but could not count to 10. Now she got lots of different horses by lots of different men. And I say liberate your sons and daughters. The bush is high.
radio, online and 106.6 FM, bringing the community together in South East Northumberland.
Say, what's up, fellas? Hanging out down here with us under the boardwalk. Yeah, man, I got my lady down. Let's throw down.
Oh, when the sun beats down and melts the tar up on the roof, and the streets get so hot, you wish your tired feet were fireproof. Under the boardwalk, down by the sea, yeah. On a blanket with my baby is where I'll be.
Under the boardwalk,
Out of the sun,
under the boardwalk,
we'll be having some fun.
the boardwalk,
People walking above,
under the boardwalk,
we'll be falling in love. Under the boardwalk, boardwalk. Now from the sand you hear the happy sounds of the carousel. Ooh, you can almost taste the hot dogs and French fries they sell. Under the boardwalk, down by the sea, yeah. On a blanket with my baby is where I'll be.
under the boardwalk,
Out of the sun,
under the boardwalk,
we'll be having some fun. People walking above, we'll be falling in love. Under the boardwalk, boardwalk. Under the boardwalk, down by the sea, yeah. On a blanket with my baby, where I'll be.
under the boardwalk,
Out of the sun,
Yeah, that's Bruce Willis there and Under the Boardwalk.
be having some fun.
I guess it's quite appropriate that I've got Allan Hepple, who's the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth from Northumberland County Council, in the studio right now. Good morning, Alan.
Good morning, Ian.
Good morning. Alan, economic growth in terms of Northumberland County Council, what areas of responsibility does that cover then?
My brief covers quite a wide range. I mean, economic growth covers a lot of issues. Covers housing, planning, quite appropriate in the circumstances.
Yeah.
And also strategic transport, which is obviously an area that I think your former guest was talking about.
I was talking about the Blythe, Ashington, Tyne rail link.
Yeah, it's one of my responsibilities as well.
Okay, so in terms of the thing we're going to kind of concentrate on this morning is really kind of housing across Northumberland. What's Northumberland County Council's vision for housing in the area?
Well, the big issue in Northumberland is, without a shadow of a doubt, affordable housing and getting people access to affordable housing in the county. I mean, Northumberland's quite a diverse county, as you're probably aware.
Yeah.
Large rural areas and a very big urban area in southeast Northumberland. So we have a predominance in some of the coastal areas of Northumberland with second homes, for example. So that creates a bit of a problem in terms of access.
Right.
House prices are high, so there's never been a greater need for affordable housing. When we started off with the administration in 2013,
yeah,
one of our manifesto commitments was to build at least 1,000 affordable homes to 2017.
Right.
So far, we've managed about 700, so we're almost there.
Yeah.
Including 300 new council houses, which I'm quite proud of. First time we've built them for 30 plus years, I think.
All right, okay, so in terms of the provision then that you mentioned, who else is involved in that? And is it just the council, or who else is involved in this affordable housing?
A variety of sources. I mean, housing associations, which there are quite a few in Northumberland, they do contribute quite extensively. And we also get provision in terms of private developers. One of the conditions we have in planning consent, it's called planning gain, is for them to build a portion of affordable homes. That can either be for rent or shared ownership or low cost home ownership. So there's a number of sources we can get that from,
So is there a specific requirement in terms of the amount of affordable homes on a new development?
Yeah, it can vary from area to area because there has to be a viability financial viability assessment. But overall, in the new core strategy, there's a 15% requirement on all new developments for affordable housing.
Okay, you mentioned that obviously Northumberland's quite a diverse area. You've got the southeast Northumberland, which is quite urban, and then you've got the rural area. I guess the kind of housing challenges within those areas are distinctive and different.
They are. In many ways they are. If you look at some of the rural areas, you've got very, very small villages where really the 2 or 3 or even 6 houses, affordable houses, can make a real difference to that small population. In the larger areas, of course, you're talking about much bigger developments. So, for example, in Blythe, we've built houses on Hodgins Road, on Newsham, which are 50, 60 plus in numbers. So it does vary. It has to be according to local need, housing need within that particular area and demand for those houses.
Yeah, so in terms, I mean, you mentioned before about people buying up properties in some of the rural communities and, pushing the price up, and the properties, I guess, standing empty during the week and they're being used as kind of holiday homes. How when you're building new affordable housing, do you prevent those properties kind of eventually kind of transferring into private hands like that?
Well, part of the new core strategy, which is going through the final consultation just now, has a requirement that affordable homes in those kind of areas are therefore in perpetuity. So there is a condition in planning consent that will make sure that those homes remain affordable in perpetuity. And hopefully that will begin to solve that second home problem.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that it was a long time since the council's built properties, and all of a sudden you've built kind of 300 new units. Kind of what kind of change which allowed that to happen? Because it's 25 years since the council ever built a property. So have you been able to do that?
That's right. I mean, it was developed as part of the government's wish to create what they call a self-financing housing revenue account.
All right, yeah.
Which is basically the money that tenants pay in rent. It's the account that sort of manages that money, if you like.
Right, yeah.
And because of that, we were able to build up a surplus in our housing business plan, which is a 30-year, it's a long-term business plan.
Yeah.
And that was supplemented from, with money that we generated, because we could keep all the rents. Previously, we had to prepare a proportion back to the government, but now we can keep them all. So that financed the development of new housing. And it was also partly on, a borrow as well to actually, for investment purposes.
Yeah.
But the point about social housing, I think, is, and it's often forgotten, is there is both an economic case for it and a long-term economic case, in the sense that we're using capital investment to develop housing as an asset that's owned by the council, by the people, if you like, but that actually pays for itself through rents eventually.
Yeah.
Unlike home ownership, of course, where you kind of lose that the person actually owns the home themselves. And there's also a kind of a health and economic prospect there, because good housing means you get better health, you get more stable communities. You also get that security of a warm and decent home.
So in terms of kind of housing needs in Northumberland, then, is there a growing population? Is there going to be a need for more housing, or is there going to be need for less housing than what we've currently got?
Well, there's two prime issues, I think, within Northumberland. One is that there's a growing ageing population. That's the first point. And one of the concerns I have is that we need to meet that challenge in Northumberland. Developers, private developers, are not building the kind of accommodation suitable for older people.
Right.
So there's an issue around that.
So what we're talking about there then, Alan, bungalows essentially.
Bungalows, there's supported housing, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And what you have is a lot of older people occupying or under-occupying all the larger homes.
Yeah.
Now, it's not our wish, obviously, to force those people out, but there isn't an obvious choice that they can make in terms of moving to alternative accommodation. So that there's an issue there. The other issue I think that's identified in the core strategy is that because the population's getting older, there's a decline in the working age population of Northumberland. Now, if you want to generate economic growth in Northumberland, in our communities and towns and villages, then you have to have a growing working age population. So the core strategy tries to address that by developing more homes and also more jobs. The two go together in many ways.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll take a little bit of a break now for some music, and I was trying to think of some music, appropriate songs, Alan, and I know you're a big Bob Dylan fan.
This is true.
So I thought we're talking about housing. This is probably really appropriate. It's Shelter from the Storm.
'Twas in another lifetime, one of toil and blood, when blackness was a virtue, the road was full of mud. I came in from the wilderness, a creature void of form. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. And if I pass this way again, you can rest assured I'll always do my best for her, on that I give my word. In a world of steel-eyed death and men who are fighting to be warm, come in, she said, I'll give ya shelter from the storm. Not a word was spoke between us, there was little risk involved. Everything up to that point had been left unresolved. Try imagining a place where it's always safe and warm. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. I was burned out from exhaustion, buried in the hail, poisoned in the bushes and blown out on the trail. Hunted like a crocodile, ravaged in the corn. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. Suddenly I turned around and she was standing there, with silver bracelets on her wrists and flowers in her hair. She walked up to me so gracefully and took my crown of thorns. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. Now there's a wall between us, something that's been lost. I took too much for granted, I got my signals crossed. Just between till it all began on a non-eventful morn. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. Well, the deputy walks on hard nails and the preacher rides a mount. But nothing really matters much, it's doom alone that counts. And the one-eyed undertaker, he blows a feudal horn. Come in, she said, I'll give ya shelter from the storm. I've heard newborn babies wailing like a moaning dove, and old men with broken teeth stranded without love. Do I understand your question, man? Is it hopeless and forlorn? Come in, she said, I'll give ya shelter from the storm. In a little hilltop village, they gambled for my clothes. I bargained for salvation and she gave me a lethal dose. I offered up my innocence, I got repaid with scorn. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. Well, I'm living in a foreign country, but I'm bound to cross the line. Beauty walks a razor's edge, someday I'll make it mine. If I could only turn back the clock to when God and her were born.
Come in, she said, I'll give ya shelter from the storm.
Yeah, great song that one, and rather appropriate. I've got Allan Hepple, who's a cabinet member for economic growth, in the studio from Northumberland County Council. That's Bob Dylan and Shelter from the Storm. And we're talking about housing, and interestingly enough, Alan, you were talking about the fact that the council's been able to build over the last 3 or 4 years, 300 new homes, but I've seen some recent publicity that might be something that's going to come to an end. What's going on?
Right, well, the problem is that the government have changed the policies in terms of housing, and the main one that's been changed is that the government have decided to reduce council house rents by 1%.
Right, so
Now,
is that not good news for tenants?
It is. It's worth about 70, maybe 80 pence a week to tenants.
Right.
But if you're on housing benefit, it probably means little at all, to be honest.
Yeah.
And remember that 72% of our tenants are on housing benefit. So, in terms of the real impact, I mean, the real impact is trying to reduce the welfare bill. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
The problem is that 1% reduction in our income over that 30-year business plan that we have, housing business plan, means that we've now got a shortfall of 164 million.
Wow.
So that is the money that we were going to use to build new affordable housing.
So one kind of fell swoop in kind of terms of a change of this is directed by the government, is it?
That's correct. It's as a consequence of one of their policies, which is about a 1% reduction in social rents for the next 4 years. Whether that'll continue after 4 years, I don't know, because that depends on who gets a new next government comes into power. But certainly for the next 4 years, we just can't build any more council houses.
Right. I mean, just taking back, you talked about something which is kind of fairly complex, I guess, for a lot of the listeners to understand this. Yeah. The council being in control of its own destiny in terms of its rent income, and a kind of a whole range of issues which were taken into account at that time. And obviously the position on the government rent policy back in 2012 was completely different. Correct. To what it is today. So presumably now that they've changed one of the goalposts and they've reduced the income, that the government are going to go back and renegotiate that deal?
Yeah, I mean, previously, this came a bit of a bombshell, I think, to most housing organisations, and it also applies to housing associations as well, of course, because it applies to all social housing. But we were working on the basis in our business plan of a steady increase in rents over that period. Yeah. And of course, in one fell swoop, that's been reduced, and that's given rise to that quite sizable amount of reduction over that period. It's really unfortunate because we have over 8,000 people on our housing waiting list, a lot of whom are in desperate need of affordable housing.
And I mean, you mentioned before about trying to build 1,000 homes, of which the council was contributing 300. Yeah. Which is kind of 30% of the total. Yeah. If that's now been taken out of the picture, how are you looking to try and kind of address that shortfall? Where's the extra coming from?
Well, two things, I think. One is we're trying to we still work very closely in partnership with a lot of housing associations in the area. Yeah. So we're hoping that they'll continue their development plans. Early indications suggest that they probably will.
Presumably, have they been hit by this?
Yes, they have. I mean, they've got a 1% reduction as well on their end, so it's affected their kind of revenue streams, if you like, coming into the situation. I mean, a lot of housing associations have put their development plans on hold, but we're hopeful that they'll be able to contribute. They had some development plans in planning stage, so we're hoping to continue with those. The other area is probably through new development, although again the housing policies of the government have changed that substantially. The other area, I think, I took the view that we can sit back and simply moan or whinge about the government's housing policy. That wasn't good enough to me. I think we needed to actually do something about it, something positive about it. Right. Bearing in mind, there's 8,000 people out there relying on us to provide that kind of accommodation. So we have a development company which is called Arch. So
Yeah.
I've asked them and officers to try and come up with a model that will provide affordable housing. It may not be council housing, but it will be affordable. I'm waiting for a report which comes back to me on that. But we are trying to plug that gap, if you like, another way.
Right, that's quite interesting because you have got a fair mix of providers across Northumberland. You've got Arch, the development company. You've got kind of Benicia and kind of Four Housing Group who are coming together, covering kind of Ashington and the Berwick area, and then you've got ISOS, kind of Tynedale and Castle Morpeth. So how are you kind of trying to coordinate all that kind of activity with those partners?
Well, we have regular what we call key partner meetings, which include those associations you mentioned there. So we have those discussions at that kind of strategic level, if you like, in terms of how the housing associations can help the local authority meet its requirement to meet housing need, because that duty remains, obviously. So we are working very closely with them, and I'm quite hopeful, you know. It relies on the other partners, I guess, but I'm quite hopeful. I mean, the early signs are quite positive from them.
Yeah, so in terms of the council's role, you've got 8,000 people on your waiting list. Do the housing associations, when they have a vacancy, do they come direct to the council to get people off their waiting list?
Yeah, we have what's called a common allocation policy,
right?
Which the key partners that the housing association mentioned actually are part of. They signed that agreement, so they do advertise their houses through that process, as do we do with council housing. So we've got like a kind of a one-door access, if you like, to social housing in the county. That's being reviewed currently, obviously, because there's, you know, everything needs to be reviewed at time to time. But that's the method we'd choose to use to actually get that option, to that choice, if you like, to people out there sitting on the housing list. And that can include their own people on their housing list as well, of course.
Okay, and in terms of, you mentioned people on the housing list, in terms of homelessness in Northumberland, is that a big issue?
It's. I don't have the exact figures.
Right.
We deal probably with about 700 or so, maybe 800 presentations of homelessness each year. But what we're pretty good at, I have to say, is preventing that homelessness. So we're trying to reduce the demand on council housing. It's not always the case that some solution to homelessness is a set of keys. It can be a negotiation with the landlord, for example. It can be things like talking to mortgage providers, where somebody's defaulting on their mortgage. There's all kinds of options we have to prevent that homelessness, and that's got to be the best way, in my view.
Okay, sounds really good. That leads us quite nicely on, as if by magic, to a song from Phil Collins, all about homelessness. It's called Another Day in Paradise.
It's another day for you and me in paradise.
It's Mind Your Own Business on Koast Radio on 106.6 and across the world on the World Wide Web. That's Phil Collins there, and Another Day in Paradise. I've got Allan Hepple, who's the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth from Northumberland County Council, in the studio, and we are talking about housing across Northumberland this morning. And we're just talking before the break there about the impact of government housing policies, Alan, but I understand there are some further changes on the way. There's a housing and planning bill going through Parliament at the moment. What's involved with that?
Yeah, that's correct, Ian. Not wishing to put a too fine a point on it, but I think these policies are probably the worst housing policies ever created. And from my point of view, they actually could spell the end of social housing as we know it. And I don't say that glibly. I think it's quite an important. It's a statement that's well evidenced, I think. And just to make you aware of some of the changes, we talked about affordable housing earlier and the great need for that across the county and elsewhere in the country, for that matter. What the government did was that there has been a definition of affordable housing,
right,
which includes obviously council housing, social housing, which is provided by councils and housing associations. It also includes affordable housing provided as a planning gain by private developers, so shared ownership, low cost home ownership, that sort of stuff. The government changed the definition of affordable housing to include starter homes. Now, starter homes are designed to increase the supply of affordable of home ownership across the country. Strangely, since 2010, home ownership has consistently fallen in real terms since 2010. And the Tories have always said that they are the party of home ownership, but strangely it's actually fallen.
Right.
Been a massive increase in private rented housing. I'll talk about that as well.
Okay.
But in terms of starter homes, these are homes to buy for first-time buyers under 40. That's the first point.
Right.
But they are going to cost £250,000 outside of London, so in Northumberland, that's the price of them, up to £250,000.
Right, that seems like an awful lot of money for a starter home.
Yeah, but they're actually funded by the taxpayer with a 20% discount.
Right.
And that's why the government say they're affordable. But in reality, some of the research carried out by people like Shelter and others has demonstrated that in the vast majority of the country, 90% has been mentioned, they'll be actually unaffordable to those on the national living wage,
right,
which is what the government introduced last year.
Okay, so you would think that if they're going to develop an affordable housing policy, that there would be some kind of link with people's incomes, and if they've got another policy over there which talks about a living wage, that somehow the definition of affordable housing would be kind of linked with a multiplier of whatever the living wage was. Because if you can't afford your housing, then you cannot really live, can you?
I'll just give you one simple fact here. Yeah. In Northumberland, the average earnings of people in Northumberland is about £24,000 roughly.
Okay.
Right? In order to afford that starter home in Northumberland, you're talking about having to have an income of £37,000. So the person on the average living wage would have to have a £13,000 a year pay increase. That's not going to happen, is it?
No, not my lifetime anyway.
So that's a real fact, and I think that demonstrates that starter homes are simply not affordable.
Yeah.
But of course, because they're now in the definition of affordable homes, I would imagine that developers will satisfy that planning requirement by saying, well, we'll build a stack of starter homes.
Yeah.
But for people on the housing waiting list, it's meaningless.
Yeah, so in terms of your kind of planning policies where you're saying 15% of any new development's got to be for affordable housing, they could simply come along with 15 £250,000 houses, £250,000 houses which have been discounted.
Yeah, but they would be acceptable under the definition.
Wow.
So they would meet the 15% requirement. That's the strange thing about it.
Yeah, they'd be beyond the reach of the average working man or woman in Northumberland.
Well, the way I look at it is starter homes will actually, rather than include them, they will actually lock out working families in the most part.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. Okay, and what else is happening in the housing building? So we've got starter homes.
Yes, we've got starter homes. The other main area, I think, is that the government has introduced a right to buy for housing associations.
Okay.
Previously, housing association tenants had a maximum, could buy the homes, but it had a maximum discount of about £16,000, I think it was. But the government have said, well, we're going to change that, and we're going to allow housing associations tenants to have the same discount as council house tenants,
Right.
which is up to £77,000 per property.
Wow.
Now, obviously, that costs a lot of money, potentially.
Yep.
And the way they're going to pay for it is by forcing councils to sell off the most valuable housing stock when it becomes empty. So in Northumberland, it stands to reason that the highest value housing stock that we have, council housing stock that we have, are in those rural areas. Stands to reason in many ways.
Yeah.
So there's an issue about having to force the sale of that. The other point I think is that by doing that, they're actually driving another nail in the coffin of social housing.
Yeah, that just sounds to be like, I just kind of can't get the logic behind that, because you're saying, in the rural communities in particular, you've got real acute housing pressures for providing affordable, low-cost housing for the people who live there, and at the same time, that's going to be assessed as your most valuable stock, and the government are coming in and saying, sorry, Mr. Northumberland County Council, you may have local people who need these properties, but they're your high-value stock. You've got to sell them in order that housing associations can provide discounts to their tenants who live in other areas of the country.
That's correct. It's worse than that, actually, because it's not compulsory to sell them, but if we don't, we still have to pay the government the money as if we had sold them.
Right.
If you understand that point.
Well, I do, but I don't. Yeah, I think is the answer to that. That's interesting. But this is voluntary by the housing associations, and do you know how kind of Benicia, ISOS, what their kind of view is in the locality?
Well, I think they have the same issues. I mean, if they sell houses, I mean, they're comfortable, I suppose, in the sense that allegedly the government is going to meet the bill of that discount. Although I have to say it's not entirely certain that, because at first the government said it would be a grant they would give them,
right?
And now it's not going to be a grant, so it could be subject to government decisions about how much they actually pay them.
So I guess once the property is sold, it's lost to social housing altogether. So
it is, yeah.
Is a requirement for to replace for like?
Yes, the government has said they will replace them sold one by another one. So 1-for-1 replacement.
Right.
I have to say though, since in the last 12 months, when council houses were sold, for every one sold, for every one new one that we built, we had to sell 8 in order to meet the finance to build one new council house. So that's the ratio. You've got to sell 8 to build one new one.
So unless there's some substantial changes in the way that this whole thing kind of operates,
that's correct.
In the real world, like for like, 1-for-1 replacement probably just isn't going to happen.
I don't think it will. I mean, that's my betting, but. Hey ho, but just hopefully it won't. But you never know. The other main area I think, which is the worst bit of it, is that traditionally council tenants had security of tenure, which means that unless they did something wrong, like not pay their rent, for example, or cause a nuisance to their neighbours, they could have that property for life. It's called a lifetime tenancy.
Yeah.
The government want to change that. They want to end that lifetime tenancy and create 2 or 5 year fixed term tenancies.
Mm-hmm.
Now the problem with that is that it's a bit like the private rented sector, where you have a 6-month term for your tenancy.
Yeah.
There's no security there. How can people plan their life? They need more than 6 months. And equally, if you're looking at 2 or 5 year tenancies, you've got disabled people, you've got older people. How are they going to be?
So it's going to place a bit of a worry on everybody if they think, in 2 years' time or in 6 months' time, my tenancy's up for review. Am I going to be allowed to stay here? I need to decorate. I need to buy some new carpets. It's going to kind of eventually put their life on. Virtually put their life on hold.
The only saving grace, I think, is that it applies to new tenants rather than existing tenants. But nonetheless, we've still got that issue of possible issues and relates to that kind of community cohesion, if you like, in terms of those community making them stable and good places to live. That's my concern in that sense. So there's a number of areas that within that planning bill, and I haven't talked about all of them obviously, but that causes real concerns.
Well, certainly quite worrying.
Yeah, I mean the worst aspect was in the budget last week. Affordable housing didn't get a mention. I think the Chancellor missed a great opportunity there to do something. Even people like the Federation of Master Builders have criticised the Chancellor for that, which is quite interesting.
Quite interesting. I mean, the other kind of interesting kind of aspect which did get some coverage in the budget was the issues around kind of welfare reform, which have a massive impact on, a lot of people who are dependent upon benefits in order to kind of manage their daily, weekly budgets, if you like. And some of the pressures that's there. There's quite a few changes in terms of housing coming there.
Well, if you look at council housing, particularly social housing more generally, I think I've already mentioned that nearly 3/4 of tenants are on some kind of housing benefit.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily because they're not working. That's because they're probably on a lower wage, a minimum wage type issue.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of disabled people within council housing. So the welfare reforms that are planned by the government and still going through the process will have a disproportionate effect on those tenants, clearly, and affects their ability to pay, all those kinds of things. So the kind of dream for home ownership amongst tenants, housing associations included, is probably a bit removed from reality, I think.
Yeah, we've kind of even seen the resignation of the guy responsible for the welfare reforms, Ian Duncan Smith.
Yes.
And I guess he's kind of seeing that the latest proposals are kind of even a bridge too far for him.
Well, yes, he has said that. In my view, it's a bit of crocodile tears, I think, because this is the guy that actually introduced the bedroom tax, introduced the massive cuts on employment and support allowance, and supported the welfare reform cuts of the government all the way along the line. So, crocodile tears, I think. I think it's got more to do with the machinations within the Tory party, not about what he says it is. That's my personal view.
Yeah, just kind of sticking with your personal views, then, Alan. I mean, if you were given the role, you've got a role within Northumberland as the kind of cabinet member for housing. If you were, given a similar kind of role on a national basis, what would you do differently to this government then?
Right. Well, if never going to happen, I guess. But if I was housing minister, there's 2 or 3 areas, I think. One is, and it's always a personal view, this I have to say. But one of the main issues is that home ownership is out of reach for many people in this country. And, it's not surprising. They get a fixed-term mortgage, they get a fixed-term payment, and, we know that life isn't like that. It can change. You can have kids, and that causes a lot of money. I know personally it does.
Yeah, me too.
You can have illness in your life. You can have problems with your job. You could become unemployed. So I think what we need is a much more flexible mortgage offer that actually reflects those life changes.
Yep.
I think they can switch between paying rent, paying mortgage, that kind of. I know it's a long shot, but I think it's a much more realistic way of tackling that unaffordable home ownership market. The other one I think is that councils need to build houses for all, not just for. It sounds a bit contradiction from what I said earlier, but I'm not saying we're not stop building social housing, but council housing. But I think we have to be prepared to look at people's aspirations in the community, because their aspirations may not be to rent; it may be to buy.
Yeah.
So offers like low-cost home ownership, even private rented, maybe is the way forward, I think. And if you look at private rented, one of the big issues that people tell me about almost every day of the week is about the security, the quality and standard of some houses provided by private landlords. That's not to say we do have some good landlords.
Yeah.
We have a number who are accredited by the council, but there are a lot where it leaves a lot to be desired, I think. So my concern, I think, is the private rented sector in this country is the only unregulated business in this country. And that can't be right. It needs, I don't know what kind of regulations you put in there, but certainly 6-month tenancy is no good to anybody. We need to think about extending that term. We need to think about how do we tackle the issue of quality and standard as well. If that's by regulation, so be it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Alan, you've got the core strategy, I believe, is kind of reaching its next kind of phase. It's a cabinet today. What's the kind of progress in terms of moving the core strategy forward, and when's that likely to be fully approved?
Yeah, well, the one thing that we've done is we've had a lot of consultation on this core strategy, and that was quite deliberate. Certainly, when I took over this back in 2 or 3 years ago.
Sorry, Alan, just a quick explanation of what the core strategy is.
The core strategy is ostensibly a planning document, and it sets the scene for the housing that needs to be developed and the employment that needs to be developed. Employment sites that need to develop, where do businesses go in the next to 2031.
Yeah.
So it sets the scene for that. And the point about the core strategy is it's the blueprint that developers want to develop new housing or new retail offers or new businesses. They have to follow that core strategy. You can't in a sense, you must have consideration to it. So it's quite a pivotal document in planning terms. It's had quite extensive consultation. The last one we did recently, we had over 2,000 people responding to it.
Mm-hmm.
Some are not happy about it because they don't want to see loads of houses built
in their backyard. Yeah,
that's right, and that can happen, and you've got to deal with that. But there have been substantial areas raised by residents that we think we need to focus on to get it right. So we've had to unfortunately delay it. Originally, we were going to get this through examination. It has to go through examination, which means it has to go before a planning inspector of the government, and they have to approve it. That was originally designed for sort of autumn this year, but now we're going to delay that until probably the summer next year, 2017, in order to take account of those issues that have been raised largely by residents and others, where they say we've got a little bit of a problem, and we need to make sure that that's right.
Yeah, some make a lot of sense. You'd rather take your time and get it right than kind of rush something through and get it wrong almost.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Allan Hepple, thank you very much for coming in this morning. Allan Hepple, who's the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth at Northumberland County Council. And I thought I would finish up with a nice song, Allan, that we've had a bit of a discussion about. Can you tell us a little bit about this song and why you think it's appropriate?
Imagine by John Lennon, one of my heroes, I have to say, from an early age. And I think it sums up imagining a better future, imagining a different world almost, the one that's more fair and perhaps prosperous, maybe.
Okay, Allan Hepple, Cabinet Member for Economic Growth from Northumberland County Council, thank you very much for coming in this morning.
Pleasure.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill.
Join Hannah and Eve for Teenage Kicks every Thursday 6 to 8 on Koast Radio 106.6 FM or online. Get in touch on Facebook or Twitter at Teenagers Kick to be part of our teenage takeover.
Hey, have you heard you can advertise on Koast Radio?
Yes, your advert could be here.
So how can people find out more?
For further information, email our marketing team on coastradiomkt@outlook.com.
And not forgetting Koast with a K.
That's right.
Let the beat control your body.
Catch DJ John in the mix, playing your favourite tunes every Monday night, 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. on Koast Radio, 106.6 FM.
Koast Radio, your station, your music, your choice. Koast Radio. Get in touch. www.coastradio.co.uk. Like us on Facebook to keep up to date with what's new on Koast Radio. Contact Koast Radio now. Call the studio live on 01670 432 107 and get involved.
It's time to begin. I'll count it in.